This is a single leg hinge balance on a balance pad with a band on my knees. Shows from two angles. So from the front, I'm gonna get my feet pretty close together, press my toes, especially on the leg you're gonna start on, into the pad down and flat, get the feet engaged. Press the knees out into the band, so the center of the knee is roughly over the middle to outside of your foot without rolling your ankle. You're gonna send your hips back. So I'm not coming into my knees, but hips back. That's gonna get us into our hips and glutes. From there, you're gonna bend one knee, pull it up off the ground, trying to just maintain this position that we set up. Then I'm gonna send the knee that's in the air back at a 45-degree angle, about half to 3/4 as far as you can go. Meaning I just don't want it to come all the way up because then we might be using our low back. So I'm trying to maintain this hinge position, maintain my feet and toes pressing into the pad, and then try not to let this knee wobble too much here. And then every 10-15 seconds, resetting the knee that's back at the 45-degree angle. This is a pretty tough one. You can see I'm a bit wobbly. I've had actually some ankle injuries on my left side, so this is one I'm working on to make sure I fully regain stability on the side I've had some ankle injuries on. And that's something that we do see after a variety of things in the lower extremity. It's harder to stabilize on that side. I'll show this from the side view, and then I'll give a few other pointers. So I start, send the knees out a bit. The key move is hips back a bit. Why that is because if I just stand tall, I might get the hip engaged, but sometimes people hyperextend their knee, and then they can kind of hang out without using too much muscle at all, or maybe they're just using their low back. And so knees out a bit, hips back, helps so I'm not just using my knees and my quads. So now I have balance. My hips are going to be working. You might feel that the most, especially this is where you need some attention, but the quad also has to be working so I don't fall over. And so I find that this just gives a nice balance of work throughout the whole leg. Is often surprisingly tough. It's counterintuitive to put somebody on a balance pad and give them more support. I'm going to show this just so I stay on camera, but you can just put fingertips on a wall or a countertop. But I would rather have you work with a little support, so I don't need much pressure on this PVC pipe here to stick, to get a whole lot more stable. And to be honest, on my left side, that's a little harder than my right. I'm probably right on the edge of where I want to add some stability. Meaning, I don't want this to be so hard that you're kind of all over the place and can't stabilize. If you gotta touch a toe down here and there, touch a finger to something here and there, totally fine. But I'd rather have us within a margin of stability, occasionally touching a toe down, occasionally touching a fingertip, then I'm kind of all over the place, hanging on for dear life. So I'd rather have a little bit of support with my hand and fingertips on something, because now I can really feel some burn here, I can feel it in my shin, in my foot, and so I actually probably get a lot more benefit from having some support at first. So don't be afraid to do that, particularly if this is pretty hard. So there's one or two other cues. Sometimes as people go, their low back starts to kick in, so this leg that's out to the side, that starts to pocket really starts to go high, and then they start to kind of arch their back. And so doing your best to take some deep breaths as you do this, that helps to relax the low back a bit. We want to keep, even though the leg is going back, I want to keep both hip bones pointing roughly forward rather than the outside one pointing off to my right. And then I want to make sure I'm not tilting at my low back off to the side, because now my torso is like a counterbalance, again shuts off the hip. So I'm trying to stay roughly centered as I work here. And then some folks might be surprised, but I typically want to work up to at least 2 minutes of endurance here, because all of these are endurance muscles, and so we got to train them as such. So this one's often surprisingly tough, but can yield a lot of benefit for something that's fairly simple. If you get too kind of, the cues I'm giving are a little too much to think about, one thing is I'm just kind of sending my butt back and hinging my knees and hips a bit. As long as we're feeling work, back pocket glute area, we're probably in roughly the right position. If you only feel your quad or knee, only feel front of the hip, only feel low back, then you might want to think about sticking your butt back a little bit more. So hopefully that simplifies this for you. Give it a shot. This can be a great one, especially for its relative simplicity.